The divorce rates in America and Europe are much higher, like 50% I think now. But in India, the divorce rate is 1%. And how bad does it have to get for you to leave?
You know, this is the question in a way is not relevant to India's context. Because you're speaking of India and why the divorce rates are so low, it's not that people are happy in the relationship, or even if it gets really bad, the problem is they can't move out. The context is that we have been socialized into believing that marriage is sacred. You have to make it work.
How do you think the world has changed after the pandemic?
It has changed to 180 degree when it comes to the health. And if you've noticed, there has been an increase in cases wherein you're not being able to find again the physiological cause of it. Now the conversation around mental health has gotten so normalized. We were told be stoic, they are told be vulnerable. They wear it on their sleeves. They will say I'm not okay.
I just wanted to understand, as a psychologist or as a counselor, how do you deal with people who genuinely have anxiety issues or someone who's depressed? I mean, is there a generalized way that you deal with it? Guys, welcome to the second episode of Infinite Health. The guest I have for you tonight is someone I've known since we were children, and I'm so proud of how far she has come and the space she is in. Snehal Saraf is a psychotherapist and founder of Sneh Therapy. She works with adults, couples, families, mainly dealing with complex trauma, anxiety, depression, attachment styles, and accessing authentic self. Now, her approach is to blend Buddhist philosophies of acceptance and compassion with other modalities like inner child healing, gestalt, narrative, and existential therapy. Now, Sneh Therapy is the first organization in India to have started a support group for the survivors of narcissistic abuse called Empowered Empaths. Please check out the links in the description given below. This podcast has been sponsored by DecodeAge. DecodeAge is India's first longevity research company aiming to increase the health span of people. Their supplements and tests are based on the latest scientific breakthroughs in the fields of longevity and aging sciences. The supplements they provide target biological mechanisms that cause aging. For example, as we age, the NAD levels in our body decline, leading to mitochondrial dysfunction and genomic instability, two main reasons for biological aging. Now, by supplementing with DecodeAge's NMN, one can replenish the NAD levels in the body and tackle aging at a cellular level. Now, there are numerous clinical trials and experiments indicating that NMN increases the health span of individuals who consume it. I take it myself and it feels amazing. Apart from NMN, DecodeAge also offers other longevity supplements like spermidine, CA-AKG, fisetin, and trans-resveratrol. If you want to start your healthy aging journey today, then go to DecodeAge and visit DecodeAge.com and use my coupon code Anant to get a discount. I hope you guys enjoy the episode. Please leave your feedback. Welcome to Infinite Health. We've known each other for so long. We've known each other for I think 30 years. And it's so great to see you here. We've never really interacted academically or professionally at any point. I've just known you as a neighbor. So how does it feel?
Yeah, from neighbors to now our paths intersecting like this.
Absolutely.
Where you are talking about health and I'm talking about mental health specifically. I think it's beautiful to come back here and just visit topics which we are really passionate about.
No, absolutely. I think Infinite Health is like a passion project for me, and mental health is one of the most important cornerstones of it. I'm really obsessed with how one should approach their health. And mental health, I feel, is one of the core pillars. And I think this would be a great conversation because I really have a lot of questions in my mind about different people with different issues, because I might be one myself. But there are so many people who suffer from anxiety every day, or who suffer from so many various issues, and just how to start, because starting, I feel, is the most difficult part. So, I mean, just before we begin, I just wanted to understand what was your motivation, what was your trigger to pick psychology as a subject?
Yeah, so it happened really organically for me because there is a backstory to it. And it started when I entered my school life. So from the first day I started to throw up. And that was because school environment was really unfamiliar for me. We didn't realize this. And the teachers were trying to understand the cause. They probably thought that I'm being overfed. In the morning, I was taken to the doctors and I was giving pills, but the physiological cause was not.
But this was when you were a baby?
Yeah, it was just like the upper kg, lower kg, right? So from the first day of the school, let's say. And I remember there was just this one teacher who was curious enough to try and find out what is going on. Why is this little girl suffering? And I was taken to the counselor in the school. And the counselor, we didn't talk. There was no talk. All she did was she smiled at me, she hugged me, and she told me, Snehal, you can do whatever you wish to. You want to sleep, sleep. You want to play with me, talk to me, it's up to you. That happened for a few days. School started to feel safe and comfortable. I think within a week or so, the symptoms just vanished. And now when I'm talking about it, I can't even relate to that younger Snehal.
Right.
But there came a point, my sister was also studying psychology, and she told me much later when I was in, say, class 9 or 10, that, what you were going through is something called separation anxiety disorder.
Okay.
Now, this is something that every child goes through. It's a phase in their life. For some of them, it's just difficult to perhaps come out of it. They need more holding, more safety, especially when you're entering a new environment.
Is this somehow related to ADHD? Because that's how it starts with children, right?
So ADHD and separation anxiety both come under the spectrum of problems that children go through, but it is not something that
It's not related to each
It's
other.
not related to each other. It's just that a child has always been in the family environment where they know the people. So when they come out of it, there's a bit of abandonment that they feel, and to just transition smoothly into a new phase, they go to the separation anxiety, which has to resolve itself, and it has its arc. It is going to crash at some point. For some children, it's difficult. So I think I fell under that
Category. But you came out of it, and that's great.
And I came, so that's when I understood the power of that unconditional positive regard that I received from that counselor. Just that much, and today I'm somebody who is touching so many lives.
So, and that is something that stayed with you for so long.
I didn't realize it until I was told about it later. So when I understood what happened and how it impacted me, it was a very organic choice. Even though at that point psychology was not a lucrative field.
Yeah.
Nobody was talking about it. It was looked down upon, stigmatized. But I think it was just this inner knowing that this is the need and this is the future. It happened.
I think psychology has really blown up, like in this, I mean it in a good way.
Yeah.
I think people are, more concerned about their mental health. And I know this might sound silly, but I think it started with that movie, Dear Zindagi. I think that really brought up the field of psychology in such a big way, because I remember I started therapy after that movie. And so I'm just saying that it's just something that blew up, I think, in the 2016 and 17, and it became, especially after the COVID pandemic, it just completely blew up.
Yeah.
Right? But like talking about children, like, are children your focus of psychology? Do you specifically cater to children, or what kind of patients do you focus on?
Yeah, so I am a counselling psychologist and I've specialized in couple and family therapy. So my focal point are adults, mostly older adults even there. So I'm not directly working with children, although I know my story is
Right.
where it began from, but I found my niche here. I find my comfort here. And we are doing a lot of work with also people who are going through narcissistic abuse.
Okay.
There's a lot of chatter now that's happening on Instagram, but it's been something that India is especially not very aware of. We do not talk about any other kind of abuse than physical and sexual.
Yeah.
Narcissistic abuse has a lot of focus. I mean, it is laced in manipulation, so psychological and emotional abuse.
So, this is something I'm really interested in, and I'm
I'm
going to
glad.
ask you a lot of questions on this. I mean, so I want to start from the start. What is narcissism?
So again, the popular notion of narcissism is somebody who is very pompous, grandiose, is obsessed with themselves. The Greek story also talks about this person who was obsessed looking at himself. It is not completely related to that. I think if I have to just cover it in a nutshell, what it would come down to is that somebody who is wanting to control you or have power over you to feel good about themselves. So everything is about power and control dynamic here. And they use different kind of manipulations, like say gaslighting, negging,
Right.
just some to mention, to get that kind of, control and then feel great about themselves.
But again, just delving from a personal point of view, like when there are, in couples, both people are trying to have some sort of power over each other.
Power dynamic,
Like
yeah.
there's always a shift in power dynamics. Sometimes the wife is right, sometimes the husband is right, or whichever way people identify with themselves in a relationship. So, I mean, how do you judge who's the narcissistic one? I mean, that's something that's really, something I've really wondered. I mean, sometimes I felt, even in my own previous relationships, that am I the narcissistic one? or is my partner? Because again, I just know this on a very superficial level.
Yes, but again, it's something that I'm asked a lot of times. Firstly, if you are saying or asking or introspecting, am I narcissistic? You most definitely are not. A narcissist is never going to self-reflect. That's the first thing. Second, when you talk about the power dynamic, it's about where you're coming from, the intention. Let's say that I'm the wife or I'm the partner in a couplehood. I want to have a certain kind of control, but that's coming from the space of I want to feel more loved. I want this person to turn towards me. So I will probably just stay a little aloof so that this person just shows some interest and attention to me. My intention is to feel loved and wanted. But when the intention for the narcissist, where they are coming from, it's mostly that I want to make sure that this person feels some kind of a disconnect from me such that they'll want or they'll chase me more. Not because they want to be wanted, but because they want to feel good about themselves. So it boosts their self-esteem and ego.
So they like the chase, basically.
Yeah, the chase for a different reason. The chase for the reason that they want to boost their ego and self-esteem. It's nothing to do with the emotion of love. So in the act, it can look very similar. I'm being aloof, he is disconnecting, but I'm doing this for love and that person is doing this for some other motive altogether. Right. There's a different ulterior motive, and it's really difficult to get this, which is why many people stay in abusive relationship for years and years. You can't uncover what's happening.
I read this somewhere that if things don't get bad enough, you don't leave. Mm-hmm. I mean, people would rather, I'm talking in an Indian context. I mean, the divorce rates in America and Europe are much higher, like 50%, I think now. Mm-hmm. But in India, the divorce rate is 1%. And I feel like this, I refuse to believe that all 99% of the couples are happy. So my question to you is, how bad does it have to get for you to leave a relationship? Because I have always suffered with this notion of, can you just leave because you're not happy? Or, how do you even start defining that happiness in that case?
This is the question in a way is not relevant to India's context. Because you're speaking of India and why the divorce rates are so low, it's not that people are happy in the relationship, or even if it gets really bad, the problem is they can't move out. The context is that we have been socialized into believing that marriage is sacred. You have to make it work. Your families are going to tell you, ये तो होता रहता है, go to a counselor, तो it's like the last option though. But they are going to patch you up. They are going to tell you that we have gone through so much, you can deal with it. Third, and the most important, I think, I'm specifically talking about women here, they do not have that kind of economic privilege that they can think about moving out and whether their family is going to take them back. Especially if you have children, it just makes it more complicated.
Right, the dynamics becomes extremely complicated.
Yeah, so in India, I think people are in horrible setups. I don't know how many clients, but they can't even think of moving out. Our context doesn't support us enough to do that. It's looked down upon, the stigma of divorce. It's a lot to handle.
So when you're counseling these patients, is there a certain style that you follow? Are you inspired by someone? Because I follow so many of these psychologists, like Estherperel, if you've heard of her. I love her conversations and work about not just marriage, but infidelity. And what is your view on both of this? And what is your style of therapy that you follow?
Okay, first, she's amazing because she captures the nuances and the gray spaces. Because things are not as the polarity that we look at things with, black and white. It is not at all that way. When it comes to my practice, first, it is very trauma informed. The trauma lens is basically that I'm not going to diagnose you first. I'm not going to look at, what disorder does Anant have? I'll mostly be like, what are the underlying factors? What happened because of which this has stemmed into anxiety or depression? There has to be an underlying story. This is just, scratching the surface for trauma. There's a lot of body involved in it. And we are also borrowing a lot from the Buddhist philosophy of mindfulness, self-compassion, radical acceptance. I think there's some groundbreaking work that's happening with these approaches. So these are the two that I'm surfacely blending. Other than that, there's a lot of inner work, shadow work, inner child healing. Those are my niche.
I wanted to delve a little bit deeper into core beliefs. Because this is something that, when I've been to therapy so many times, I've been asked what your core beliefs are, at least to discover what my core beliefs are. Do you think your product, like what you are as a person, is a function of your core beliefs. And is that related to your parents? Like, because I might sound silly here, but like they say that sons are like their mothers. The core belief comes more from the mother, and for daughters, the core belief comes from the father. And that's how they function. That's how they mimic their behaviors, because you start mimicking your parents after a certain age, right? I wanted to understand if you feel that there's any validity to that statement, and B, how do core beliefs shape a relationship? Because if I'm in a relationship with you, how do I judge each other's core beliefs?
Right. Okay. So first, a little bit background on core belief. I think you're coming from the cognitive behavioral therapy.
Cognitive CBT. Yeah.
CBT is the one which is told that it will be the most effective, but it's just one aspect of your entire personality.
Right.
To answer your question very specifically, I think let's take up an example. It'll get easier. Parents are just one of the influencing factors. The major influence is from the context where you are in. So now let's say that in the sibling position, you're the oldest one, okay? And when your younger sibling was born, somehow there was an implicit understanding that Anant is going to take care of the younger sibling. So you had to probably adult very quickly and you missed out on your childhood. Unconsciously, a core belief that will get formed in you, perhaps, just a guess, is that I have to be independent. I have to make sure I'm okay because I'm the caretaker. Okay. I cannot loosen up. I need to be always just very straight-jacketed. Yeah. Okay. Now, when we take this forward into your adulthood, you may shy away from being vulnerable or asking for help because you have this hyper-independence mode on in you.
Right.
Okay. Now, this will, of course, influence your relationship because let's say every relationship works on interdependence and you are not letting yourself be vulnerable with your partner will feel that kind of a distance. And they might just feel that, you're probably not connecting. There's something that the intimacy, emotional intimacy might be lacking.
Right.
That may become a problematic factor there.
So actually what you said, I really relate to it because even though I'm the middle child in my family, I always grew up with this notion that I need to take care of everyone because for some reasons, like the financial independence wasn't that much in my house and there was always a lack of something, and I always felt that I was duty bound. Something that I need to take care of it and I need to be the responsible one. I think even while going through college, this is something that I saw in myself where I always felt that I need to be responsible or I need to take care. And, I'm again very scared of asking for help. Like I feel like someone will judge me and think that I'm vulnerable if I ask for help. So I can really relate to it.
I'd like to add to that because I know you personally. Now I'm just bringing another aspect to this. You were the middle child, but you were also the only male child.
Yes.
And that is why perhaps that internal pressure that I need to be the one who is going to be the breadwinner. So you see how much gender politics, sibling position, like I was saying, the context, the socio-political, economic context adds on to your core belief. It's a lot. It's not just the parents. I think the parents are unjustifiably in focus when it comes to psychology, but it's a lot.
Snehal, so I really want to delve deeper into the field of psychology in a very health-related kind of way. Mental health is a cornerstone of health, and we live in a post-pandemic world. My first very generalized question is, how do you think the world has changed after the pandemic?
It has changed to 180 degree when it comes to the health. And first I'll talk about the mental health and then maybe weave into the physical health there. If you've noticed, there has been an increase in cases wherein you're not being able to find, again, the physiological cause of it. One example being IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. Again, the amount of cases that are coming to us from the doctors, you fall into that, you're suffering. Yeah, so the doctors are giving them anti-anxiety pills, muscle relaxants. And that just goes to suggest that IBS is actually a function of heightened anxiety that people must have felt during COVID or post-COVID as well. Because
after so long?
No, it's not after so long. Okay, then let me just also touch upon this. It will give you some idea why I'm saying post-pandemic it has spiked. There's this theory called window of tolerance by Dr. Daniel Siegel. He says in a very simplistic way, we all have a certain bandwidth to take stress. Okay, so let's say on a scale of 0 to 10, I can take 5 every day. Now just imagine what happened post-pandemic. Suddenly our entire universe got rearranged. You had to come back at home. You have to face the dynamics which you were probably escaping. You had to, the entire boundaries shifted, like work and personal life balance got really blurred. These are just few things that I'm touching upon. Basically, whatever homeostasis we were surviving in or existing in, it got uprooted. So the stress increased. Now I'm having to take on more stress, and the window of tolerance that I had for stress, it collapsed or shrunk.
So do you think this has led to more anxiety in people?
Yes, because what happens then is that when the window of tolerance collapsed, what would happen with you? You would either go out of the window into hyperarousal. The hyperarousal is that excess overdrive of your nervous system, overthinking, restlessness, overeating perhaps, everything in the excess zone. And if you go downwards, some people go into hypoarousal. That is the complete shutdown of the nervous system. I can't get out of bed. Depression, chronic pain, constant fatigue. So I think what has happened post-pandemic is that people are operating either on the upper side of it or they are at the deficit side of it.
Like complete opposite spectrums.
Yeah, and that is why they started to realize the importance of mental health.
Right.
Yeah.
I have a very specific question on this. So is this age related, or do you think that this affects people of all ages? Because I'll tell you why. Because, you know, we live in a social media world where everyone talks about how the younger generation, the Gen Z or Gen Alpha, is such an anxious lot. Mm-hmm. And that, you know, adults don't really think so much about, people never talked about depression like 20 years ago, you know?
Yeah.
Now people are saying, oh, I'm so anxious, oh, I have an anxiety problem. They've normalized it. Like, you know, the younger generation. Would you agree to that statement, or do you feel that the older generation just deals with it differently?
I have a completely different view on this. So it was very recently, I felt like I just became that auntie uncle I would run away from. I happened to comment about I'm in the millennial, by the way, so I realized that I said, yeah, kaam ka ethics nahi hai. They're too anxious, they don't work very well. And it instantly came to me that, you know, when I would have been told by my older generation, like my parents only, that you're fretting about these things, we wouldn't. I felt I was not understood. Like, you're not seeing my context. So I just, stepped back and I was like, maybe, what is the context? I want to maybe know what's happening there. And I realized this intergenerational fight of resilience, we were more resilient than you, makes no sense. Because what has happened now in their context, we happen to born in the cusp of the revolution of technology and digital revolution. We got the best of both, the playgrounds and the PlayStation. They have been born in just this, rapidity of
technology.
Things. Yeah, everything is so rapidly changing. They're just catching on with it. Plus, now the conversation around mental health has gotten so normalized. We were told be stoic. They are told be vulnerable. They wear it on their sleeves. They will say, I'm not okay. So it's not basically they're more anxious. Now they reveal it more. So that's why there's more reporting of it. Not necessarily that the cases are high. I think anxiety has been throughout. Our ancestors who started surviving, then the ones who started to create, the ones who made the houses, then our parents who were maintaining. We are the ones who are taking it forward, and these are the ones who are catching up with the new changes. We all have been anxious throughout.
So it's just the ecosystem that affects of how you represent or express yourself, basically.
Absolutely. The expression is different. The coping is different. Anxiety is still the same. We just don't talk about it. They do.
Like, just to get deeper into anxiety, how do you define anxiety anyway? Like, how do you clinically define anxiety? If someone says I'm an anxiety issue, it could just possibly be that, I'm feeling anxious someday, something didn't work out. Yeah. But if I keep having that, can I go out and say that, I have an anxiety issue? Because I don't think most people go to a psychologist or most people don't get themselves diagnosed with anxiety, but they keep saying that they have an anxiety problem.
It's a very layered conversation. So I'll start with this first. Let's not go into the clinical depth at the moment because you can Google and find that out. Anxiety in itself is first just an emotion. All of us become anxious, and in a way it's good because right now if I and you won't be anxious about this podcast, we won't be giving our best.
Right.
It's a good emotion, not a problematic one. When does it become a little problematic is when it starts to interfere in our day-to-day life such that it holds us back instead of propelling us further. So anxiety, then I would like to define in terms of a disorder, would be that I'm constantly thinking about the future, one, and I'm constantly thinking what is the worst that will happen in the future. So it comes up in the thought layer, it would come up in the form of what if this podcast is just horrible, I don't perform well.
Right.
Okay. And that is going to create a sensation in me, most likely in my stomach, for different people, different places, that it doesn't allow me to be in the present. When I'm not in the present, I'll probably not be effective.
Right.
Yeah. So that is how we look at anxiety. It's a constantly your body is here, your mind is, running faster than that. And depression, just because we're talking about it and for ease of understanding, depression just becomes the opposite. My mind is in the past. And I'm thinking about how things could have been, how I could have been different. And I'm caught up there. And from there, I'm feeling that, I've not performed a lot in my life. There's a feeling of dejection, worthlessness, etc. So it's like anxiety is pulling you forward, depression is pulling you backwards. Nothing of me is in the present moment, anchored here.
So can people be both depressed and anxious?
It goes hand in hand. If anxiety holds one of your hand, depression will come right there. It has to.
It's almost like you're living in your past.
And future.
But
not present.
I'm just saying, I'm not saying this as a friend or as a mentor or colleague, or I just wanted to understand, as a psychologist or as a counselor, how do you deal with people who genuinely have anxiety issues or someone who's depressed? Is there a generalized way that you deal with it?
There is a general way as well, but that is a surface level work. For instance, I will try to help them come back to the present moment. We'll work with their what if statements.
Right.
That's a cognitive distortion, always thinking about the worst case scenario. You need to be more mindful about it and you need to challenge it. And then you use your breath to anchor into the present moment. That's the standard. Okay. But I think it doesn't end there, which is why the trauma perspective, this anxiety started from somewhere. There's a story to it. I think it's really important to touch upon that. I'll fix your anxiety for now, but for the times in that it's going to come up, you need to have a relationship with anxiety such that you can calm it down. That is where the trauma perspective enters. We do a lot of work with the body and from where it started, the context.
And this is where I want to start my next question from, is because, again, because we live in such a social media world, childhood trauma is something that has been thrown in our faces so much now that I really want to understand your perspective on what really is childhood trauma and what induces childhood trauma in any way. Because I just want to bring in a small aspect of research that recently happened in America, I think in the University of Washington, where they said that childhood trauma is necessary for success. If there isn't a little bit of trauma put into just the right amount into a child's life, then they won't succeed in life. You have to reward the effort and not the result. Would you agree to what are your views on childhood trauma?
Yeah.
And then we'll come back to the second part.
Yeah. For that, we need to unpack trauma first.
Okay.
People think trauma is an event that has taken place. So we say traumatic experience as if the car accident you were in or the natural disaster. It isn't that. It's what happens inside you because of that event. So what may happen inside me is that I get trapped in one of my survival energies: fight, flight, freeze. Fawn is the one which has gotten added, which is people pleasing. And somehow that freeze that happened, which was needed at that point of time, it did not finish its arc and crash, which is why I'm stuck there. So that stuckness is basically trauma. That's one. So childhood trauma is basically the ongoing chronic trauma. And this goes very unacknowledged because this doesn't mean there was a sudden critical incident or a turning point. It's just how your life was structured and functioning. Like I spoke about the family dynamic. Something as simple as, let's say, I have an older brother and I'm being denied some opportunities because I'm a girl child. And the preference is given to the older sibling because he's a male child. It can create a certain trauma in me because I have started to embed a belief system I don't deserve. And my body has started to settle for less. I'm okay with it. And my body doesn't fight. It is always fleeing away from opportunities. I don't think I'm meant for it.
Right.
So this can be trauma as well.
Right. So again, I'm just asking you for a very silly example. There are so many times we hear that kids were slapped when they were young, but they don't have any trauma at all. They were like, "Yeah, mummy marti thi," or my dad used to slap me here and there because I was a very naughty child, and that didn't affect them. And that same thing can affect a different child so differently. Like, is it because, again, but I'm just circling back to core belief. Is it because of the kind of, like you said, the kind of belief that they inculcated that being slapped is okay?
So maybe, let's say in our generation, being slapped was okay because we thought parents are God, whatever they do is right, and this is the way to correct behavior. But just circling back again to what you were saying, I don't think they're not traumatized. They're not acknowledging the trauma.
Okay.
They've just denied the experience and they have given a justification for it. There is still something in them which is probably fearful of authority figures that would come out. You know, in a very different, latent way it would come out in their life. It's just that they do not know of it. They are not very aware of it. Trauma is something that nobody has been able to escape. So the research you were talking about, I think all of us fall in the spectrum of trauma. We all are carrying it. There's another research which talks about adverse childhood events, ACE. I think all of us will tick some of the boxes there.
Right.
Depending on that, we can understand who is more sensitive to what, etc. Yeah, but it's pervasive. It's ever present. Some are acknowledging, some are not.
Because I was just reading this article a while back, which said that most abusers are abuse victims themselves.
Hurt people hurt people.
Yeah. So is that an effect of childhood trauma, would you say?
Yeah, that is another way in which our childhood shows up. Absolutely.
Because we brought up childhood trauma, I want to circle back to narcissism because I really find that topic very interesting. How do you identify a narcissist? Because I know it's a very nuanced topic and there are many layers to it. We probably could have another podcast on narcissism. But I just, as a very generalized way of understanding if a person is really narcissistic, because I'm, again, just let me explain the context. I'm asking this in terms of two people in a relationship where they constantly judge each other. So for so many couples out there, or for so many people who are looking to get married, or who are discovering each other, I mean, how do you identify? I mean, if that is even possible, how do you identify narcissistic traits?
Again, a very different perspective that I want to give you, because I'm so extensively working with the victims and the survivors. I think if you go by the rule book of whether they have certain features that come up in the diagnostic manual, you won't be able to guess. Because they are going to talk about, like I said, the grandiosity and the pompous. I think what you need to understand is how you are feeling in relation to them. Okay, right. So for instance, you feel thrown off a lot of times. You feel like your self-esteem is chipping away because they are, very subtly calling you out and making you feel lesser about yourself. You all the time feel confused that sometimes I feel this person loves me and is attuned to me, and sometimes I just feel like I don't know who this person is, what's happening. Yeah. Most importantly, you see a cyclical pattern. Mostly in a narcissistic relationship, what will happen is they are going to put you on a pedestal, which we call love bombing. They are going to mirror you and make you feel like, I'm the perfect soulmate for you, I understand you. They are going to be really good listeners because they want to know everything that's going on for you, and that becomes their weapon to control you. And then slowly you see that they are using that weapon and devaluing you. So very backhanded compliments at times. And when you get backhanded compliments, we feel that we need more validation. So, we start hunting for that more and more, and they keep making us feel lesser and lesser about ourselves. Ultimately, there's this point where there's an escalation, things blow up. You may feel, I don't want to be with this person. And that's when they start to apologize. And that's a apology, like a fake apology. They'll make everything right and they'll tell you how they'll change. And it starts all over again.
Right. Okay. It goes in cycles.
It goes in cycles. But most importantly, I think being in touch with your gut and intuition, something feels off here.
I mean, since we were talking about narcissism, I want to get into self-awareness. Because I feel it's because, when I started therapy, I think the first thing my therapist told me that is that, the first step to therapy is that you need to be self-aware, right? That there's some issue with you. I mean, how difficult is it? I mean, I have a lot of questions on this, but how difficult is it for you as a psychologist to make someone self-aware? Because, most people who need therapy don't come for therapy.
That's true. So we don't work with them. We can't help the people who don't want to help themselves. Right. Narcissists fall in that category, which is why we say that that's the only disorder which is not treatable. We can work with any other personality.
Because we haven't worked with them.
We have. They do come to therapy.
Okay.
Again, to prove to their partner, look, we took a step.
Right.
But there's no intention to work.
Right.
So there's nothing happening there. But when you talk about self-awareness, I think that's the first and the very important step, but that's not the only step. For instance, even in a narcissistic abusive relationship, after a point, we tell our victims or the survivors that, look, there's something that you are also doing because of which this is getting allowed, the abuse. And that doing must be that you are trying to please that person all the time because you need validation. Right? So we need to work on that bit, which must be coming from your core belief, your childhood, and your childhood trauma. So we start to move into that side of them healing because that's under our control. We can work with that. We can't change the person. So that's one way of working with it. But again, like I said, self-awareness is just the first stop.
Sure.
For example, I will tell you, Anant, you're in a toxic relationship. You know it, but the awareness is probably not getting implemented.
Right.
That's where I think now here comes the part where the body plays a role. So if you want, we can delve into it. Let me know how you...
No, because that was my next question of how the body and mind work with each other. Because, I mean, if I wake up in the morning and I'm feeling stressed or anxious, I won't go for the run. I won't go to the gym. So, that's why I said that it starts with mental health.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so starting with the first question is, how do you connect the mind and body in a more linear pattern?
So, is it okay if I become a little technical here?
No, absolutely.
Else we won't
This is a science podcast. Go as technical as possible.
Lovely. Technical, but also a bit in a layman language, not much jargons. Let's try to understand and look at our brain as a 3-step staircase. Okay. The first, at the base of our head, is the survival brain. Okay, the survival brain, as we spoke about, the autonomic responses, which includes the heart rate, your blood pressure, also the fight, flight, freeze mode. Right above that here is your emotional brain, emotional processing, identification, expression, etc. And these are the parts of the brain which were already present in us. What got newly formed in the neocortex? Yeah, it's this. It's what we can call a logical brain.
Yeah, the large brain.
Yeah, which is executing things, processing, decision making, attention, etc., etc. So awareness happens here, but it has to go down there into the survival and emotional brain where the trauma resides actually. Okay, so I might be aware that I should work on my health, but these two are too stressed, too fearful to support me in that endeavor. Okay, so that is when we try to, repair this connection that has happened. By one way of doing that is, okay, so there are 2 approaches to therapy as well. I think this is really important to address. One is a top-down approach, where you are addressing the mind, the thoughts only. Okay, awareness creation, it's not addressing the body. And one is a bottom-up approach, where you're addressing the body, scanning the body, trying to understand where the sensations are, what's going on here, the nervous system. And then you see a change in the thought pattern. So we have, in our psychology field, moved towards a bottom-up approach. And that is where comes in the mindfulness, body scan, making the nervous system feel safe enough to be present in the moment and not trapped in the past trauma.
Because it's a two-way street, right? I mean, in the sense that your body and mind, specifically talking about the gut, because, when you feel anxious, you feel it in your gut. So, again, is the reverse also true? Like if someone has a gut issue, can they induce anxiety or can they induce trauma because they have a bad gut or they might not have a really good microbiota?
First we need to understand the mechanism. Why a bad gut? Because of the anxiety. So, anxiety produces more acid, erodes the stomach lining, digestion becomes poor. So your gut is not in a healthy space. Not a healthy gut would actually be a cause of the stress hormones only, most likely. And if you know it is there, then any little stress, let's say that I have to come to this podcast and I don't have a healthy gut. My unhealthy gut is just going to make it worse, the experience of it and the dealing of it. So that is how it's reinforcing each other. I don't know, now it's very difficult to, that anda murgi kaun kisko start kiya, but if both are in a problematic state, they keep going, churning each other and reinforcing each other. That is how you can look at it, perhaps.
Because I have, again, another deeper question into this is habits. Because this is something I personally relate to as well, because this is something that I've faced in my life. And also I feel like this is a general concern that so many people have. I mean, as a person, I've felt like I'm a very anxious person. I'm an overthinker. And at the same time, I've had gut issues. Mm-hmm. So, I think... So I read this book a long time back called The Power of Habit. And this, there's a butterfly effect that happened. So I just decided to wake up at 4:30 in the morning, and I had nothing else in mind. I said that I just need to wake up 4:30 because I just need to start a habit so that I can get some time for myself. And once I started waking up at 4:30, I thought, I have so much time. Let's just go to the gym. Once I started going to the gym, I thought that, let's just start eating healthy. And then once I started eating healthy, I said, I need supplements to supplement my other vitamins and minerals. So I started having a supplement protocol. How important are habits? Like you said, like your brain starts with the first level, which is basically your fight and flight.
Right.
So that fight and flight is habits, right? Because that's the only thing that remains.
That would be a very reductionist way of looking at it. We cannot ascertain that. But let's go back to your own example. When you said I decided to wake up at 4:30, what space were you coming from? You said I didn't think of it much. Anything else to that?
My intention was only to wake up early. It was an easy win for me because I thought that if I wake up early, I can, take my dog for a walk. I can have my black coffee, listen to my music, and just spend time with myself.
So 2-3 things that I'm picking up is, one, that there was an intention. Second, it was to take care of yourself, to avoid certain things and ensure your well-being. And it came from a very easy space. There was not much stress to it, how it should be. I think let's pick it up from here, how habits can actually get formed. Earlier you were talking about, when I'm stressed and I get up, I don't go for a run. Okay, this is where these two other brain come into the picture. When I decide to create habit and I'm coming from a space of, let's say, shaming myself, I should be doing this, I don't like how I'm looking. What may happen is I may form very fierce goals. And I sit down and be like scheduling everything, this much time for this thing, etc. And by this time I should get this result. That entire process creates so much stress and fear in our emotional brain that it is just going to do something called logical brain hijack. So I've planned everything, I can't execute it. It's completely hijacked there. Just because it's so result-oriented that I feel I need to climb that mountain, I can't do it. It feels too daunting a task.
So it's almost like you're creating a very big goal for yourself that you can't reach.
Especially where it's coming from, the shame, not liking this, or sometimes just that, the prescriptions that are given to us, you should be going to the gym, you should be dieting. The weight of should is a lot to handle. So basically, yes, where you're coming from and then how you approach it. Now just look to another part of it, which is, I really like myself. Or let's take this example, think of people who have actually been able to form habits, especially the healthy ones, are the one who went through these very terrible, let's say, accident or diseases, and they had a newfound awakening for life and self. They started to respect their life, they started to respect their body, and that's when they changed. So basically, lifestyle became a value system. Okay, they did this because they started to honor themselves and appreciate their life. Self-love. So when I'm coming from a space of I really like myself so much, I want to care about myself, and which is why I'm going to do it, it will look like an intention to show up every day. Well-being will become a practice then. I'm not having any result that I'm attaching to it. It's going to be process-oriented, more sustainable, and anything you're putting effort for, you're going to see the result anyway. So I think this is a process which can, at some point build habits, maybe slower, but that solid foundation. It will stay. Even if something comes into your life, some stresses, you will return back to it very easily. Versus in the other one, if something doesn't go your way and the result you had planned, it crashes, it takes a really long time to return back to it. We just stop.
But again, just to delve deeper into this, I have so many friends and family members who've come to me for advice on health, and and I've given it to them, simple things like, what blood tests they should get done, what foods they should eat. But, they never end up following it. Even if they do, they would follow it for maybe 10 days, 20 days, 30 days max. And they just get back to their old selves. I mean, there's so many people who have the worst medical conditions in the world. I mean, they are diabetic, they have high cholesterol problems, they're taking 100 pills, but they still refuse to work on their life. And this is something that has really baffled me for so long, because it's easier for me because I respect myself to not do that. But is it like, would you call it disrespect for your own self? Or another way to put it would be, would you say that I don't get validation from myself, I get validation from someone else? So if I'm going out partying, I'm drinking and smoking because I get validation from the friends around me or from the people around me, and I don't get love for myself. And also, again, my third part would be, Is this an introvert-extrovert trait also?
One by one, let's pick it up. Okay, the first one being why they aren't doing it. There has to be a payoff, like you said. Validation is one of the payoff. Changing the lifestyle will probably take away that gain that they are getting by not changing the lifestyle. For some people, it's also sympathy. We're just, touching upon what's possible. I'm not saying this is the only reason. Okay. For some people, it is just that it gives them an excuse to, इसलिए, मेरे काम नहीं होता है. I'm not lazy, but I'm so ill. They need to be in that ill state. It justifies many other things in their life. But another reason why I feel people might not be ending up helping themselves is because when we talk about health, we are not talking about, how to integrate it in a way to understand what relationship do I want to share with my health. We will say diet kar lo, meditation kar lo, but somebody who is going through a lot of trauma, meditation may not suit them. It might bring up a lot of anxiety. It's a disturbing process. For some people, diet is not the way of life. So I keep it very simple with my clients. I say, let's just make sure we are not spiking our stress hormones, the cortisols. Whatever you take up, do not stress about it. Then our entire purpose is defeated. Even if you're thinking of journaling, now to make a task out of it, it's not going to help us. Tell me what is going to keep your stress at a minimum. So maybe something like I go for salsa. For me, that's a part of my health. So maybe understanding that what does health constitute for me and what is doable and what is something that I'll probably have some fun doing in as well. It might be a more holistic way of approaching it. You don't have to always go by diet, meditation, gym, yoga. Those are the first thing that pops up, but those are not what constitutes.
So I have a slightly controversial question on this. I mean, I actually had, it's okay to not body shame someone. It's okay to, you can't insult someone. Like I 100% believe that you can't go out on the street and insult someone or judge I mean, of course we are judgmental by nature, but not judge them on their face to make them feel bad. But at the same time, I somehow feel that there is just a thin line where you're celebrating obesity. By saying that you're okay, you're fat, you smoke, you drink, you're okay. Don't worry about anything, just be okay. I mean, I know
you're not wrong. You're not wrong. It's actually, we have not elaborated on what do we mean when we say it's okay. This is Instagram therapy as well. We just put that much and then you don't know the underlying. So when we are saying it's okay, we don't mean this is acceptable and okay. So radical acceptance means if you've seen a picture that has gotten viral, one person is complaining, it's raining, why is it raining? I hope it was not raining, I can go out then. And one person is just like, it is raining, it is what it is. Just that much. So what we do with our clients is to take away the shame. I hate my body, I don't like this. Because that is not going to help you. Your relationship with yourself is not going to help the emotional, You said, let's just accept it is what it is. Integrating that part of yourself, when they become okay to just see it, then we're like, okay, now what do we do about it? So then they will automatically move towards helping themselves. We are not saying you just be that way, but first start with the acceptance. And then, for instance, I'll just give another example. I was working with a client. She was obese. And when we decided to move into implementation of the tasks that we had decided, homeworks, we started off with, just placing a hand on the tummy and being like, thank you for expanding and making space for me and my anxiety when I was overeating. Thank you for cooperating and being there for me. And now I want to be there for you. I'm going to help you out. You don't have to take this stress and burden any longer. And that help is probably just minimizing some things from the diet. Just one thing. Right. Being compassionate to your body. So it's just a way to remove the shame and bring acceptance and compassion.
Okay, I get it.
For the same work.
So it's basically when we were talking about validation and self-love, I think what you're trying to do is induce self-love first.
Because that is the foundation. If that is not present, they won't return to those habits.
So if you don't have self-love, you won't build habits.
Yeah, or I mostly term that as self-compassion. If you're just, let's say you're kind to your family, your sister, your brother, because you love them. So if you won't feel kindness towards yourself, you're never going to...
You won't do that to someone.
You won't, yeah, so...
But are habits and discipline the same thing? Because it's so difficult to keep up with habits. I consider myself as a very disciplined guy, like someone who's at it, like day in, day out. Like, I'll wake up at 4:30 in the morning, I'll go to the gym, I'll do my breath work, I'll eat healthy, like, just...
Why is this important to you? Tell me that.
Because honestly, again, it comes from my childhood where I feel like I'm responsible for everything and that I'm duty bound and that if I fall, everyone else falls.
So is it compulsive? I have to do this.
Yes. So it's basically, it's like if I don't do it, I fail.
Everything is.
So if I don't do it for 3 weeks, I feel like, oh, I was in depression for 3 weeks. And that's a word I loosely use. I would say that, oh, I was depressed for 3 weeks, I didn't work out.
But you might have actually gone through that phase of just, nervous system which is always at the edge. I have to perform. If it's not, it feels like
so what happens is, like, whenever there are holidays, I feel like, oh, I need to take a break for a week. And then after a week is over, I feel like a crash. I feel like, I'm not going to do this for another 2-3 weeks. Like I set a date for myself, specifically during Durga Puja or Christmas. And so my question is really that even though I consider this as a habit, but if I'm not doing this for 3 weeks, I mean, how are habits and discipline correlated to each other, in the sense that, like, is it okay to, like, can you call yourself disciplined and still have a burnout in the middle?
You can be disciplined and you can still not carry out the habits. I'll tell you why. Because it's again pinned into the intention. Okay. So take the Hindi equivalent of discipline. I'm thinking of sadhana. Mm-hmm. So when we talk about sadhana, I think what also comes up for us is a certain worship. You revere that so much, that you respect that act so much, that you are always going to do it no matter what. So for me, discipline is that I have the intention for it. Let's say I have the intention and practice and discipline for my work. Even if I burn out, I will go back to it because I can understand that my clients need me. Okay, I give enough value to it. So I'm tying this back to what we were discussing earlier around habits. When it comes from self-compassion, self-love, value system, we do not have to be compulsive about our habits or be scared. And you're not going to just think, Anant, what if we take away that depression? What if you do your things and it is falling in line, and sometimes you rest, you allow that and you bounce back and you don't feel that, you just failed, or...
The intention has always been there.
It's there. So yeah, it just minuses out these things. Yeah. I'm not doing yoga for about 2 months now. It's my hectic, my schedule is extremely hectic. I do not feel like I'm doing something wrong, or there's not this, stress all the time. Go back. Yeah. I know that right now there are stress from my other parts of life. And when that settles, I'll organically go back, because this is important to me.
Because I've realized that even when I'm in like this phase where I'm not doing the things that I wish I was doing, I think that there are certain habits that remain. Like, I'll still not have that sugar. I'll still not, like, indulge in all the things that I used to. I think, okay, that makes sense.
Trust in yourself. It's important to you. You will go back to it. It's become a part of your life. It's your lifestyle now. Right. So another thing which, we talk about is you need to be constantly motivated, etc. I think, how can that be a constant resource? Scientifically, motivation is actually generated in your emotional brain, not your logical brain. So if I'm feeling very fearful, my motivation is going to fluctuate. Whereas if I'm feeling happy and settled and present, content, my motivation is going to be also present. Right. Okay. So
I think being present is something that I really relate to, because I was just about to say, because when you were talking about zoning out, is because I zone out so much. I feel like whenever I'm sitting with a group of people, I'm just not there. And that, like, I'm completely at a different location.
Now, that could be about the introverted, extroverted thing that you were talking about. Okay. I think we mix up there.
Right.
We think introverted people are the ones who keep to themselves. Physiologically, introverted people are the ones whose threshold is very low for things. I can get stimulated easily if I'm introverted. 2 more people added to the group, too much for me. Yeah. Too much noise, too much light, too much for me. Okay, so I reach the threshold, so I need to withdraw. So that is why my withdrawing is zoning out. It's a way of taking care of myself, perhaps. Extroverted people, they need more and more stimuli to be present.
They need more people to give them energy.
Yeah, that's where they get energy from, and we get it from, conserving it. Right. So I think those are 2 separate things. But yes, if we are zoning out, maybe again allow it. It's your way of body or nervous system telling you that this is getting a little too much. Right. You need to step back, anchor yourself, do some breath work, just allow some rest, bounce back into the focus.
I think, Snehal, my final question to you is, we've spoken about so many things today. We've spoken about narcissism, core beliefs, discipline, focus.
It's a entire package.
I think creativity is the only one which is left. I'll definitely call you for more podcasts for that. But as just for the young adults who watch this and all the young professionals who are getting into their careers. I mean, if they are self-aware and if they really want to change their life, I mean, is there a general advice that you would want to give to people about how they need to start sorting their mental health out? Or how they need to be balanced?
It will be a controversial one, perhaps,
Okay.
and maybe
Looking for controversy on this one.
also very incompatible to maybe how you are going about things or what you believe in. This is my personal philosophy. This is how I work with my clients as well. I believe the slower you go, the faster you are.
Right.
And this comes from my Buddhist teacher. She shared a really beautiful story around it. And she said that there was this person who wanted to go and learn martial arts. He went to the teacher and he asked that, how long will I take to become the master of this, just like you? He said 10 years perhaps, just arbitrarily. So the student said, you know what, I'm going to put my day and night into this. I'll do anything and everything, my soul out completely. Then how long will it take? And the teacher said, then 15 years. And he was flabbergasted. That's where my teacher ended the story. The takeaway basically was that. So again, when I'm putting my heart and soul and everything into it, I'm most likely just, setting myself up for another burnout. I'm going to take longer time to rest, longer time to bounce back. When you go slow, your nervous system integrates things better. They take in the new system better. Again, the same thing. Self-compassion. Be compatible to what your nervous system is and how it is like. If you're introverted, just take in that much. If you're extroverted, attune it that way. Your relationship with your health, your body, your nervous system, and you will go where you have to.
So the takeaway is slowly is the fastest way to grow.
Yes, and attunement to yourself. There's no prescription how things should be, how you should be. I also don't want to tell you.
That's a very beautiful way to end this podcast. Snehal, thank you so much for coming. It's been a pleasure having you. I'm going to take away this teaching that slowly is the fastest way to grow. I'm going to make this a caption of my podcast. But it was wonderful having you here. There were so many topics that I would want to touch more in detail with, like specifically creativity, discipline, and focus. But once again, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me here, and you are doing some incredible work. It's just an honor to contribute whatever little.
Thank you so much.